Hello, everyone. This is Cynthia Mazzaferro, and I am so excited today to bring to you a very good friend, an author that is also with my publishing house, Morgan James Publishing, and her name is Sarah Beckman. She's an author and speaker who lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with her husband of 24 years, and they have three beautiful children who one of them has just graduated from high school. And she experiences on both sides of the bed, one that helps others and that being helped by herself. She provides her authentic view of her book, which is called Alongside. When she's not writing or speaking, you might find her in the kitchen creating something to share with the neighbor in need. She has a BA in journalism from the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and also works as a communication coach and corporate trainer. So welcome, Sarah. I'm so excited to have you here today and talk about your wonderful book.
Thanks, Cindy. So glad to be here.
Great. So why don't you start first by what caused you or made you or inspired you to write your book Alongside?
Yeah, so as you said in the bio, I've had experience on both sides of the bed, so to speak, which is ultimately what kind of created it. But I call it the decade of hardship. And we started with bed rest with my daughter, with my third, not the one who just graduated from high school, but my last one who's still in high school. And I was on bed rest for 11 weeks and received so much help and care and support for our family because I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And then this baby who was coming early, 11 weeks. So I was stuck in my bed. And then not long after she was born, about 18 months old, she was healthy and amazing. Everything went well. And then I had to have back surgery. And I ended up having 4 back surgeries in 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I was really receiving a lot of help because a couple of the surgeries I was laid up for 3 months. And the instructions are you can't lift anything heavier than a kitchen plate.
There goes the baby.
Right. There goes the baby, the car seat, my life, the laundry, my job, stay-at-home mom, right? I couldn't do any of it. So then in that same time frame, we had a really good friend from church who was diagnosed with leukemia. And we walked kind of side by side through my back surgeries and through her trials with cancer. And then a neighbor who lost a husband and then herself was diagnosed with cancer. And then a brother-in-law who got cancer. And those 3 people in our life with cancer all died 1 year, 2 year, 3 year.
Wow.
And so all that in 10 years, which some people face that in 10 months. So I understand that it's not necessarily unique in that not going to win a contest for volume. That wasn't the goal, of course. But what ended up happening is that I learned so much, not only from my experience, but then watching their experience. Because it wasn't my sister, my mom, my husband. It was people close to me, but just enough removed that I had a bird's eye view of all the things people did that were good and all the things that people did that weren't as good.
Right.
And so, yeah, some people know what to do and some people don't.
But I think this is a really wonderful topic because I think in nature, most of the time, most of us are in service of others. And with that comes different emotions. Sometimes we are nursemaids, if you will, or mothers. We are care providers. And that could be your own family. It could be strangers, like you said, the neighbor, family, friends. But that sometimes we do that and we actually feel resentment and anger, or it's the role that we assume we're supposed to take on. So, and the other thing about needing help and support ourselves, often we are very reluctant to ask for that unless we're so seriously incapacitated, like in your situation, you're desperate. And so I think there's a real wide realm as to asking for help ourselves and being needy. I think that's a 2 different wording or analysis of that. And also how we can best share and support others. So let's take these, if you can, both on separate journeys, because I think, or maybe you think they're linked together, or do you feel we need to address them separately?
No, I mean, you're right. There's definitely sort of the art of giving and the art of receiving, if you will. They're both really hard. So from my experience, receiving was very difficult.
Right.
And so when I wrote the book, I tried very hard to combat the way I tried to combat sort of that general notion of how can I create ways for people to help and love so that it's easier for the person in need to receive it.
Right.
And one of the things, for example, I talk a lot about making your offer specific, because when you make it specific, it's easier for them to receive. For example, if you say, let me know what I can do, as someone who wants to help me, stuck in my bed, mothering babies, don't know how to get through the day, and you say, let me know what I can do, then all the burden is on me. Right. To come up with something, to follow through and ask you, and then to hope that that's actually something that you can or would do, right? So it can be really awkward. But if you, as the giver, combat that, if you really want to genuinely give, then don't say a generic, let me know what I can do. Say specifically, I would like to watch your kids once a week. I would like to drive you to your chemotherapy. I would like to help you pick out funeral clothes. Whatever the specific is, it's easier then for them to say, I don't need that right now, but I need this. Could you help with that? I mean, that's like, once you've made an offer that I really believe is genuine, then it's easier for me, if that's not the thing I need, to even almost say the next thing I need. So it's a win-win all around when you do that. And it makes it so much easier for me to receive it and say, well, I mean, the way she offered it meant, it seemed to me she really wanted to give it.
Right. Now, that's perfect. So there's two ways to go about that too, because someone's coming to you asking, what can I do for you? So, and I love that you've given a good example about being more specific and concrete with what you really could use that support in. But let's also talk to the audience here that's listening to this, that maybe they're not ill, maybe they're not in bed, but they're feeling overwhelmed because they take on everything. They're doing everything, and their family's not there. They've grown up, but they're still doing everything. We probably can use that same strategy of saying that, you know, I could really use support. These are some of the things that I would love for each of you to take one or two of these items to provide family support, not just for me because I'm overwhelmed or stressed, but because it allows each of you to grow and be independent, and also offer guidance and assistance to others, which is a beautiful form of love.
Yes.
Right. And so I love that part. I think it's so important, this aspect of asking and receiving love and support from others. So I think that it's such a beautiful component. So now let's go to the other side, because this is really an important aspect, which I think we tend to do often. And I think there's also, I know even for myself, sometimes when someone is really critically ill, you know, like with cancer, it's a very difficult time. And I think many times people feel very uncomfortable asking too many private questions, you know, like if I ask this question, how are you doing? Or how's the chemo going? Or is it growing or shrinking? Right. You know, you don't want to like almost ask those, but you kind of would like inquiring, how's it really going? What is your advice as to how to approach someone who is very ill or terminally ill, and being open, and how comfortable are you with that honesty?
Yeah. Well, I think there's several things that come up when you say that to me. And one of them is that I think the relationship is really important. So what level of relationship do you have with them? And do you have the right, so to speak, to be given that private information? So one of the things I talk about in the book is called relationship tiers. And we talk about tier 1 being the person that is very close to you, your mom, your sister, your inner ring, family, very close friend, talking a lot, seeing each other often. I mean, this is, you know, to quote Grey's Anatomy, they're your peeps, right? So just they're your person. You definitely would have the opportunity to be able to say to them, how are you really doing? Right? So then we move to level 2 relationship, which is maybe they're a friend, but you're not hanging out on the weekends. You see them, they're coworkers, they're neighbors, they're someone you see on the same sports team if you're a mom and you're mothering and sharing that sideline thing, or a neighbor that you stand at the bus stop with, or someone that you work down the cubicle way from, but you're not working on projects together regularly. So it's the next level. You're close, but you're not the inner circle. That's level 2. And then level 3 is the next removed. And maybe you see them at church or on the sideline, but you're not visiting, but you do know them. They know your name, you know their name, but you're not super close. And then tier 4 is, I don't know you. Okay. But maybe it's Cindy's friend, and Cindy told me about her, and I have some compassion in my heart for her, and I would like to do something. So throughout the book, I weave the ways that are specifically helpful per the relationship. And so in this situation, your question is a great one, because what we need to know is when someone has cancer, and terminal specifically, because you asked that, I think that when you're 1 and 2, that maybe that's something you ask. If you're 3 or 4, it's not your deal, not your place. And this whole notion of knowing your place and your relationship with someone allows you to have the wherewithal to think through what's appropriate and what's not. And people have told me that it's given them so much freedom, because not only does it help you know who's yours to help, it also kind of allows you to say, I don't have to help everyone.
Good.
And you can sort of leave some things to the side. So if you're a tier 1, I think that's a question you ask. If you're 2, you really think it through. It's not necessarily, how's the chemo going? Because here's the next principle, which is that you want to always nourish normal. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, when someone is in an extended period of trial, illness, duress, whatever it might be, when it's not something that's just, acute, but it's chronic, then that one conversation where you're looking at them with sort of the pitiful eyes, how are you? Mm-hmm. It might just be the straw that broke the camel's back. Mm-hmm. And even friends that I'm in tier 2 with that have faced serious loss, I don't always ask about it.
No, right.
Because it's not about me getting the information and getting to be in the know. It's more about, what do they need? And do they really need me in Target, in the back of the church, on the sideline, wherever I might be standing, at the office, at the coffee pot? Do they need me saying, how are you? Or do they want me to just maybe talk about work? Because their whole life, everywhere they go, it's all about cancer. It's all about this, whatever their trial is. But terminal illness, and kind of like, what's the answer? If you're terminal, what's the answer? When you say, how are you? Well, I'm dying. Yeah. It's terrible. Yeah. I mean, I had friends who said that to me. All of my terminal friends said, what do they want me to say when they ask me that? Now, it's very different if you're facing breast cancer and you have a great prognosis, and I'm a tier 2 or 1 and I see you. We don't want them to think we don't care, that we didn't ask. But there's a way to ask that would allow us the opportunity to know if they really want to go there or not. And I would say it's an open-ended question.
And sometimes just saying something like, I've really been thinking about you, or you've been on my mind a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know that I heard from a doctor, which I think is really important, is a person who's expressing compassion is just allowing yourself to be present and listening for what they want to talk about. So you don't have to come in necessarily with an agenda, even to say, what is it I can do for you? That can come out of the conversation. But because so much, they just want people to interact with them and have that conversation, whether it is about the illness, their needs, or totally something off subject at all. To take their mind away from it. I think those are really great steps.
And we can't be afraid to go there, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what you're getting at, is that there's times they just really do need to talk, and we shouldn't be afraid to go there, but we want to let them lead that and not be asking for the purpose of wanting to get all the information or the inside scoop, right? We want to always keep it about them and what do they need, and not make it about us or me. What do I want to know? So as someone who faced back problems for 6 years, I just didn't want people to always, every single time they saw me, say, how's your back?
Right.
I just want to talk about my kids. I want to talk about my job, my life, my work,
see you, not the problem.
Yes, exactly.
See me, not the problem, right? Yeah. So what is the biggest mistake that you see most people make?
Oh, gosh. Well, we did address a little bit. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is saying, let me know what I can do.
Right.
But other mistakes are making comparisons. That's another huge mistake. So let's just say someone that you love and care about has lost a loved one or is facing any kind of trial. Maybe it's breast cancer, which most of us know at least a few people in our life that have had it or will have, right? Or had it in the past or have it now. And so when they say they have either A, I lost my mom, let's just use that as an example, or B, I have breast cancer. The worst thing that you can do is to start comparing their situation to yours. Oh, I know how you feel. I lost my mom too.
Yes.
Or, oh, I know how you feel. My best friend's sister's, daughter had breast cancer and she died. Well, no, those are terrible things to do. That's a huge mistake. And if you've read anything ever online, you know that everyone says, please don't compare my situation to yours.
Right.
Because at that moment, it's not the same.
It's not. And you might have other additional medical problems they don't have. Totally everything's different. And that's such an important key component on not to do that. And I think it's really important. So I want to ask you about this because I tend to be a very positive, upbeat person.
Right.
And I know sometimes, I like to stay in that energy. And that when you sometimes go into hospitals to see people or into their homes, there's a doom and gloom, a sadness,
right,
negative energy. And I can be empathetic and sensitive to why, but it's a very difficult place to reside in for me. And that it's difficult sometimes to know how much to temper that. Well, you're not coming in bubbly. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But, some people like to live in that negative energy space, or maybe they feel justified in that space. And you're trying to bring them hope and some, love and positivity, because we know positivity is crucial to creating wellness in your body.
Right.
And so what would you say about that?
I really think that the best way to take your cue from the person. Mm-hmm. So I have friends that have just the most amazing sense of humor. And if I come in doom and gloom and sorrowful and tearful and crying in front of them, that's not helpful to them. Right. Because they want to laugh. They need me to joke. They need me to be positive. So I think that it really has to do with following their lead. And again, how close are you? If you're tier 1 or 2, if they are someone who needs you to lift them up. When my friend Kelly faced leukemia 5 years, she would tell me specifically, I need to focus on the positive. I need to have hope. Right. Because I don't, and there was people in her life that were always talking about her dying. And she would tell me how hard that was for her. So I followed her lead, and I made a point of not crying in front of her. If I was sad after a visit, I would go home and call a friend who wasn't in that inner circle and cry to them. Mm-hmm. Or talk to my husband, or take it elsewhere. So there's sort of a notion, and it's not my original idea, but the notion is comfort in, dump out. And it was from an article that I think the woman's name is Susan Silver, but in the book I do give reference to who it was. But that whole notion of they need you to give good stuff in to the inner circle, to the person that's in need, not the negative stuff. And so if you have that, take it elsewhere, not to the person.
Right. And don't take advantage of them and come in with your own trash or your own burdens. Right. Where you're asking for them to help and support you. I mean,
and that's very common too. You're right. It's just, it's that sort of that comparison, or it's processing your own grief with someone else in their situation. And one of the quotes I love, I interviewed over 50 people for the book. And one of the people that answered me about what was helpful and what was not, she said, anything that hijacks my grief in the moment is not helpful. Mm. And that's that whole notion of comparing or talking about your situation. That's hijacking their grief. They don't want that.
So in some ways, they want to have the permission, if you will, to be in the zone they're in.
Yes.
However, whatever level of grief or loss or discomfort, pain, they're feeling. But it is frustrating for the caregiver. Let's say you're at that level 1 or 2.
Right.
You feel you're there, you're supporting them, helping them with the laundry and the groceries and the love and whatever. And you feel that it's going, I don't want to say unnoticed, but it's still not enough,
right.
As the caregiver. And it can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
It can. And part of the patient, if you will, the one that's suffering,
Right.
Sometimes their words can be very curt.
Yes.
And painful. And as a caregiver, I think that that's a very fine line also to realize that their words or their responses are not necessarily directed at you,
right.
but more because they're so unhappy with their present scenario.
Right. So wise to say that. It's such a good point to make, because ultimately we can't take offense in that situation. We can't look for thank yous. We can't take offense at being treated differently than we were before. Maybe non-responsive texts or emails or phone calls not getting returned, or them not spending the same amount of time they spent with us before, any of those things. Because the bottom line, and this is in chapter 2, it's called It's Not About You. And so it's not about you, the caregiver, it's about the person in need. And our job is to constantly remind ourselves that it isn't about us and our feelings, our emotions, our needs to be appreciated, to be in the know, to be, any of those things that we want. It's not about that. It's about selflessly serving someone else in their hardship, about trying to make a situation that is potentially most often terrible, awful, life-changing, and trying to make it just a little better by coming alongside them instead of, making it, well, they're not thanking me enough, or, right? I mean, it just, and we live our lives in a very self-centered way, even when we are caregiving often, because sometimes we care to get that feedback, it makes us feel good to be needed and wanted too.
It really is a double-edged sword, because I can just tell you, there was someone in my close family, and I was just sending going through a serious situation, and I just sent a text one morning saying, thinking of you, I hope you have a glorious day, really try to appreciate the sun and the birds singing, blah, blah, blah. And she didn't respond back. And so later on when I called, and she goes, well, why would you write such a thing? I'm like, here is like, you're thinking, I know you're going through all this stress, but let me plant the seed of
joy,
right? Or to look at life in a different way. But at that particular moment, it didn't go across well. So it really made me feel like, well, if you don't want me, I won't send this again. But, it hurt because I wasn't doing it to like, oh, right. Look at the day, so wonderful. I know you're stuck in a home and not feeling well. It was more about trying to see that positive energy that I see in life and experience. And that sometimes those that are ill or suffering from loss or grief, whatever, or disease, illness, that they just aren't able to create that shift. And it's very hard sometimes for me, I know personally, to be able to be there and supportive, but they want it in a almost, trying to think of the right word, inspirational like way. Does that make sense?
They want it on their terms and not yours.
They want to almost keep it in a placated, like homeostasis, static energy that they are resonating at. And now I know energetically, we have vibration. We have, happy person laughing, high energy, right? And someone walks in the room that are totally healthy, but they're a very somber, quiet person.
Right.
And you can see the shift in energy. Okay?
Yes.
So if someone's ill, or suffering from a divorce or loss of job or loss of finances, it doesn't have to be just about illness, as you point out in your book, which is really wonderful. That's what I love about it.
Thank you.
That energies like to be equal. And so when someone has a lower energy, doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that sometimes you're not going to be seen eye to eye energetically.
Right.
No matter how much your good intentions are. And that can be very frustrating for both parties, that needs to receive, but is judging you because you're coming in acting like life is just so grandiose,
Right.
even though you lowered it a little bit.
Right.
It still is a very conflicting way of being alongside someone. I love the title of your book. And I think that sometimes can hurt the giver, because we're giving out of compassion and love, which is in our nature typically. And it's not always received. And we talked a little bit about that, but I think it's really important. Like you said, it's not about you. So if they come back and don't, not necessarily appreciate, but if they don't meet you energetically or vibrationally, that's okay too. We have to also be true to ourselves and be your own energy. Don't try to make me feel really low and depressed so I can be depressed like they are. That's not healthy for either parties either.
Right. Well, and I think that you bring up a good point, because they're not always, we could do everything right, and there still just may be something about that day and how they're feeling and their situation that is just not going to resonate with what we've contributed, which, you have a positive high energy. And so you want that to be given to you, especially probably when you're in trial. That's probably very helpful for you, because if someone matches your energy, it would make you feel like they almost have the energy for you in that situation. Whereas if someone already has that sort of low energy, they may feel, and I'm totally putting words into her mouth, and we don't have her here, and I know that, it's over, but ultimately they may feel like you are putting a silver lining, so to speak, on their situation. And so the rule that I always use is, if they say something, for example, of this terrible thing happened, but the good news is this, then I chime in till all day long and encourage and affirm what they are saying. But it's not my job to necessarily apply my silver lining to their hard situation, especially if we know that's just the way their energy is in general. So I just keep saying match their level, right? In some ways, like if they are helped by laughter, help with laughter. And this really does require you to know them, right?
Yeah.
But theoretically, if you're texting someone, you generally know them well enough. So one thing, the first thing I would do is if someone ever doesn't receive something well and they say it, apologize immediately. End of story. There's no justifying. There's no rationalizing. It's their trial. They didn't receive it well. And it'll be over before you know it if we just acknowledge right away. Right?
I love that. And forgiveness is such an easy thing to do, but most people find it very difficult.
Right.
And
so you just say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make this, joyful, happy. I realize how hard it is. So please forgive me. Yeah. End of story. And most people just are fine if we acknowledge it. But in other words, we just need to know who they are. And if we do mess up, just say we're sorry. And the other thing that I really recommend for people is that they actually say, how can I best support you right now?
Very, very nice. So you're not saying they're needing, it's supporting. And it's not even just that person, it's supporting their family dynamic. Yeah. It's the responsibilities that they would normally take on too. So that is really
right. And they might say, I just need you to laugh. I need you to not cry in front of me. I need you to not act like I'm dying. I need you to not be happy-go-lucky all the time because I'm not feeling that way and it grates on my nerves, or whatever they might say. If we just say, how can I best support you, especially tier 1 and tier 2, then it really, I think, goes a long way to showing them that we care about how they need us to be there for them, how they need us to come alongside.
Right. And that brings up an excellent point. I love what you just said, that the person who is in need or needs to receive, they need to be true and authentic and share what it is that they're really needing. So
right. And if they say, I don't know what I need, then you say, okay, I'll just keep checking back in, right? Or whatever.
That's nice too. So you don't prod them more and more for
Right.
another answer because you didn't like the first answer.
Right. We have to receive what they're giving us because they only have so much margin in the middle of this trial.
Yeah, very good, very good. So what makes you, I mean, I know you shared the story about your back surgeries and having that personal experience as being why you're qualified to write this book. And I love that you're writing it from both sides. But what makes you really qualified uniquely more than just that? Is something else that you've had in your life, other family members that, or someone in church that you're a deacon maybe or something that also has really given you more expertise as to why this was such a passionate story or subject line that you needed to write about? I love it.
So that's such a great question. As we talked about earlier, that one of the things that led me to write the book was sort of my experience in this decade of hardship. But in the end, I was actually having a conversation with my sister, and we were talking about how some people seem to be natural caregivers and others don't. And so then I think that the world sort of divides itself, and they say, oh, those people that are caregivers should be doing the alongsiding, and those that aren't, we're off the hook. And we were having this conversation, and I said, I just refuse to believe that we all couldn't be better at coming alongside our friends in need, our family, our loved ones, because if we just had the right tools, then we could do it. And so that's why sort of the book became this really practical tips, strategies, actions, the whole book. If you open anywhere, the goal was put your finger down and that's something you could do for your loved one, your family, your neighbor in need. And so once I had that sort of call, if you will, on my heart to write the book, I really did feel like for me, it was really a matter of faith that I had to just really obey, that I felt God really leading me to write it. And then I sort of heard this still small voice that said, you know a lot, but you know a lot of people who know a lot. And so I was, no, I know I do, but that makes the book harder. So in the end, what I did was then I spent a year interviewing people and asking them in all kinds of trials: unemployment, job loss, infertility, divorce, suicide, abuse, addiction, all the trials. And I asked them simply this: what was helpful and what was not helpful in your time of trial? And from that, I got such amazing feedback, and all the same themes just kept rising to the surface. And those became sort of the chapters, the key chapters. So
I love that.
I wove together my experience and lots of other people's experience. So I do think it's an all-encompassing, not just I lived through this stuff and so here's my thing. Because really what I did find when I was researching the topic was lots of blogs, lots of white papers, lots of short, small, top 10, here's the 20 things you shouldn't do or say. But I did not find many in-depth resources that really were like a manifesto, this practical guide, a guidebook. How do I do this? And so I uniquely, I feel like this book chose me. I wouldn't have chosen this. I have a whole different book I thought would be my first book. And so, but I do think that I am uniquely qualified because of this. I tried to remove myself and not make it all about me when I wrote it. Mm-hmm. So that you didn't feel like I was dumping all of the things people didn't do well or did right. That is why I feel like I'm really uniquely qualified, because it's an all-encompassing viewpoint as opposed to just one person's personal experience, which is a lot of what the books are out there.
Well, it is, but also people like to hear your story, like you've shared your story, because they feel that you're down to earth. You've experienced this. You're not talking this from utopia. You're not talking about it academically. Yeah, that you've had experiences, emotions. So there is a part that we do have to share our story in our books to resonate with the audience, to let them know we've also been the receiver or the giver. And this is amazing. And you're right, you are uniquely qualified. And what I love about it too, and what I coach and talk to people about, is that our life that we live and the obstacles and struggles that we experience are rungs on a ladder that help us to propel us to what we're supposed to be fulfilling, our purpose that we're using or living that we need to walk into. So if you didn't experience those surgeries and being bedbound for so many months and years,
Right.
And having to rely on other people, how could you write this book? How can you
Right.
be the instructor, the teacher, to
Yes.
share what you found was really helpful on both sides of the coin?
Yes, it's so true. And so it was supposed to be exactly that, a delicate balance of I've lived it, but then here's all these other people, and I'm just the mouthpiece.
Wonderful. Well, I know your book is fabulous. I absolutely love it, and I know it's a huge success. I believe you got #1 Amazon bestseller too.
Yep, we
Congratulations on that.
Thank
That's
you.
tremendous. And Sarah speaks all over the place in churches and different events. So if you're interested in Sarah, where can they find more information about you? Your website?
Yes, Sarah Beckman, SARAH, Beckman.org.
Great, great. Now, I just want to bring up one more topic. We talked about the process of feeling well or unwell and what to do, but often let's get to the point where someone actually dies. And this is always a difficult part for the family or strangers or someone you've known a long time ago. How do you, and I know you have some tidbits in your book, but why don't you share a little bit here? What's the best thing to say to someone who has had a loss?
Yes. Well, I think that one of the best ways I like to refer to it is that if we focus on the remembrance of the person instead of a condolence. So a condolence would just be, I'm sorry for your loss.
Right.
Or I'm praying for you, or whatever our vernacular might be. But a remembrance is something personal that shows that we thought about that person. And so let's just say that it was your mom that passed away. And if I knew her well, then I could talk about her lovely personality and the way she raised such an amazing woman and how she must be so proud of all that you've accomplished and all of those things that would make you, as the person still here, feel as if I cared about your mom.
Right.
The way you do, as opposed to just an empty phrase that is certainly not harmful. It's not as harmful as other things could be if someone was saying something like, well, you're better off. Didn't she annoy you? I mean, no, let's not say that, right? Or, I know people who lost children, and then they'll say something like, oh, heaven has another angel. That's so great. But that person, it's not so great. Yes, maybe that's true. No problem. But right now in this moment, they are facing the loss that they want to feel and know that you are validating and honoring. And so if I didn't know your mom, then maybe I know something about your relationship with her. So then I focus on you as my friend who I would want to come alongside. So it's just as many ways as possible to just think longer, be intentional, and try and come up with a way to be very personal and give a remembrance as opposed to an empty condolence.
I love that. That's really wonderful. And Sarah, you have wonderful tidbits in this this book. And like you said, it's almost a workbook or a guidebook to help you on both sides of the coin. So thank you so much for writing this story and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
And I encourage all of you to go on to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, BAM, there's your bookstores, and they can order it if it's not already there, and look at her wonderful testimonies, her reviews, and really see if this is a book that you might benefit from or someone else that you know could benefit from this, whether they're on either end of that coin, receiving or in need of giving. So thank you so much for spending time with us tonight, and wishing you all a wonderful, healthy life, and remembering to try to enjoy sharing compassion and guidance and love to others, as we all need that. Do you have any final words that you'd like to depart on?
No, just, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I do think that all of us have the capacity to come alongside and support people in our life that we love, because it's not as hard as we think. And so we don't get to cop out and put it on someone else. And But there's a lot of great ways that you can do it. And I think the feedback I'm getting is people are feeling very equipped. So there's no more, we don't know how.
Right.
We get to have the answer right here and alongside.
Yes, there it is. That's great. Well, I wish you much success in your book and your speaking engagements in the future. And thank you again for being with me tonight.
Oh, Cindy, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Great. And take care. And until the next time, next week, when we will meet another fabulous author with a wonderful, inspiring message. Take care.